Hi, guys. Welcome to co-working. We have less than 7 minutes in this session, so you guys can speed read the introduction to chapter 13. That's what I recommend, or just review your notes on this topic, and then we'll come together to discuss in 6.5 minutes. Okay, that was the super short reading session.
I feel like there's a lot of very theoretical framework is all good, but I'm wondering how much it is the memorization of this, like a PMP exam, right? That's why I'm interested to hear from, since I found out you have this group, and I'm
Yeah.
interested to see how much memorization I need to do. And it's a lot, right? I also purchased your study guide,
Oh,
so I
thank you.
needed some help figure out how much memorization to fit into my day-to-day job. And my goal is just to pass the test.
Right, of course. To answer some of your questions there, the CDMP fundamentals exam is a test of your reading comprehension. So the only material that you need is the DMBOK, and there are no scenario questions, like it is all questions about frameworks and lists and things like that. But the good news is memorization is less important than organizing your DMBOK effectively. Lots of sticky notes. People who have the ebook is also a good strategy. You can annotate it and just make sure you put a lot of notes in the book and that you're able to quickly find things during the test. So that is the key to success.
Got it. Yeah, I definitely need to learn this because I have physical book. I started putting this and I'm like, so much memorization. I'm ready to give up. It was to memorize it, what's good for me. But that's why I'm like questioning right now.
Yeah, don't worry so much about memorization. I have a bunch of sticky notes here. I made the mistake of using paper sticky notes, so you can see they start to look messy and worn. When I did a in-person boot camp a couple of months ago, I got to see how other people set up their book, and some folks had really nice plastic sticky notes that seemed they would stand up to the test of time. I recommend that. And another thing that I didn't think of is putting the sticky notes on the top of the book. Some people did top of the book for the division of each chapter. So the starting page of the chapter, put that sticky note on the top. And then the sticky notes for the parts of the book that you want to highlight, put them on the side. That's my recommendation for how to approach the book setup, at least for the physical book.
Do you have any tips for PDF document? How we can bookmark?
Yeah, we tell people to use Adobe Reader for that. They have a free tool, and this is pretty good in terms of annotation and control Fing.
On the physical copy, what I also did
Okay.
is the bookmark on the chapter.
Mhm.
Usually there is a page before the chapter that is empty that I use the notes for that beginning. So basically my notes and my chapter beginning is actually one sticky note. It's in one area so that you always have your chapter beginning and your notes out on the same page. If you're thinking a little bit more exam oriented, you would want to be very quick to get to that page and very concise. You have to have the chapter accessible very quickly and also the notes in a very quick way. You cannot have your notes all over the place. Like data quality, you cannot have it in several pages. You need to have it on one page. You have to have your notes around data quality and be able to access that in a quick manner.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful suggestion as well. And just so everybody is aware, DAMA changed their guidance this year. So you are no longer allowed to have any kind of external notes, and you can only have one book. You can only have the physical copy or the digital copy, not both. And as Mark is saying, it is imperative that you transfer any notes that you take into your book for the test, at least the ones that you think you're going to use when you're answering questions.
Does this mean so we're gonna write on the book?
You're encouraged to
Basically.
write in the book, just can't use loose leaf papers. That's great. Okay, so I said we'd do a little bit more introductions.
Absolutely. So, hi everyone. I'm Mark Knudl out of Munich, Germany, the beer capital, I think, of the world, maybe. I am a data practitioner for the past 15 years. I've held roles coming from a data engineer up to leading the data governance program over at General Electric for financial data and also at Siemens Energy for data in renewable space. I am a certified data practitioner with the CDMP from last year, March. And basically what happened is that I've used a lot of Data Strategy Pro's offerings, such as the study group and the notes. It really helped me prepare for the exam. And I love the mission that Nicole had to really prepare practitioners truthfully, have a community that helps you, supports you in preparation for the exam. And since I saw how fruitful that activity is, I actually decided to come on board and be a career coach and help other practitioners get certified. So hit me up on LinkedIn or through Data Strategy Pros. I'm basically here to help guide you get certified.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mark. Given that you guys had time to read approximately 1 to 3 pages, what questions do you all have?
I think what I struggle with the most is how to differentiate between what I need for the exam versus what I need for my real life work. And so if you have any tips on that would be super helpful.
The exam is basically a critical reading test, and there's pros and cons to that. One of the pros is that it gets everybody on the same page with the language and the vocabulary and the frameworks. Mark gave the suggestion of studying by actually presenting to your colleagues. A lot of times, workplaces will have the opportunity to do a lunch and learn or something like that. Then you can share this knowledge and get others who work with data, like data stewards, data owners, thinking about the frameworks in the same way. Because data is very conceptual, the specificity of language is important. The book is very conceptual, so try to make it more tangible and share it with others. It's up to you how much you want to incorporate this into your work. For the data quality chapter specifically, they provide a lot of different frameworks here. The idea of data quality is quite nebulous. So we understand that data must be fit for purpose, but obviously different projects will have different ideas about how much you can invest in trusting a given data set. There's different frameworks in this chapter that might be useful for different use cases. That's something to think about as well. And if you're trying to develop an enterprise-wide data strategy with a data quality framework that can be applied across projects, then I encourage you to choose what elements of data quality are proposed in the book that you think are most impactful to your org. I really like the 6-element framework that was put forward by Dama UK. That one's one of my favorites because it's short. And if I had a company and I was in charge of their data quality, I would use those dimensions, but your mileage may vary.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's something else that maybe I can add on is that for the sake of the exam, it's critical reading. So you just really memorize the terms and so forth. And reading through it, skimming through the concepts, being familiar with it basically helps with the exam itself. But how to apply it to work? One way that I can cite is that it gives you a good framework and a standard best practice that other professionals have been doing. So one example is that we weren't so aware when I had a data governance program that actually data stewards should mainly be in the business, and the data quality rules, unless they're very technical, should be actually owned by the business. They should determine what quality means for them. But prior to reading the DMBOK, it was me and IT. We defined the rules, we owned it, we maintained it, and sometimes we interacted with the business, but we got the best practice that this should be more in the business and we should just be enablers to that. And so what happened is that we took this concept, we presented it to the business, and they said, yeah, they're up for it. We trained them on data quality. So we had them read the book as well, a little bit on the chapter, did some data quality trainings for them, and eventually moved the responsibility of data quality to the business. That's how the best practices that you read from the DMBOK, and you can bring that to your organization and apply certain concepts. What are the standards? What are the frameworks or advice that DMBOK or DAMA gives? And now you can apply that to your workplace.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Thank you. I wrote an article recently about different terminology, data owner versus data steward versus data trustee. There was a lot of commentary about the proper job titles. And to Mark's point, the data stewards are empowered from working within the business to being responsible for other aspects of the data, like data quality. And so different organizations have different ideas about this, but it's interesting to think about what that role should be called and how much responsibility they should have.
I have a question. For example, this data quality, you talk about different dimensions. There are different type of framework. There is a strong wind framework, which have 15 dimensions. And then later on, obviously talk about DAMA, the UK have that 6 dimensions, right? Well, test really gonna have those type of questions.
I mean, they could test you on anything in the chapter. So it's all fair game. It
So,
could be
so
anything.
pretty much you just have to really read triple times so you know where it is, right?
Yep.
Got it.
And also to mention, the exam, all of the 100 questions are all multiple choice. You will always have 5 options, and only one of the 5 options is right. It's really straightforward. There's no part where you have to think about it from an essay point of view or anything like this. It's just simply multiple choice. It's just really familiarity about the concepts in the book.
Right.
Got it.
Hi, Mark. This is George here. Because you said all of them would be multiple choice questions and all of them would have only one answer, right? So is it all the 100 questions would have only one answer, or would there be some which would have all of the above or multiple answers that would be required to be selected?
I believe it is always one answer. So it could be all of the above. That's still one answer, but there will know that you can choose multiple options. No, it will always be one. And when you purchase the exam, and you will purchase also a practice exam along with it, it has the same basic concept as well. 5 questions, 1 answer, and it gives the same feel for the exam itself. The practice exam is almost a close mock of the actual exam.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Just to emphasize that. So what Mark is saying is when you buy the exam from Dama, they give you free practice questions. So that should be your primary go-to to practice. And you can get a sense of the format by just doing the practice questions. They're provided by Dama on the practice platform along with your purchase of the test. Now, one other thing about the format that I wanted to highlight is there are all of the above questions for sure. Then there's also which of the following is not true, or all of these answer choices are correct except. So just be on the lookout for those and don't rush through the questions. Make sure you're using the full time to read it so that you don't make any little errors with reading comprehension of the question itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. We can go into our reading session. All right, well, I'll see you guys in 14 minutes. Hey guys, welcome back. How's the reading going?
Good.
Right?
It's a bit hard.
Yeah, this chapter has a lot in it. A lot of different vocabulary and ways to think about data quality.
Can I ask a question? Because like I said, I'm involved in like DM council. And so having a DCAM or CDMC, passing that certificate versus this, how do we weigh the value?
As you touched on, they are totally different bodies of work. So the EDM Council certifications are about the EDM Council materials. So the DCAM framework and their other publications versus the CDMP is about the DMBOK. If you already have the other certifications, I think there's benefit to enhancing your knowledge of alternative frameworks and alternative ways of thinking about things. But is this going to be the most valuable use of your time is something that you'll want to think about. There's other ways that you can prove your experience to employers as well.
Yes.
A couple of certifications are great, but if you just go overboard at the expense of other parts of your career, then that's not a good approach either. I think you are raising a good consideration that everybody should think about if this is worth the time. But I will say I like the DMBOK a lot, and I think it's worth reading.
Yes, it's definitely because there's a lot of things you can consider in the practical part if we don't, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a good reference. It's like a reference book to me now.
For
Yeah, so-
sure. Yes, definitely. I reference my copy a lot when I was in data strategy consulting. It was really helpful.
Right. Thank you, Nico.
One other thing I want to touch on too is for the CDMP, the barrier to entry is pretty low. You only need a 60% to pass. I think most people should just attempt it if they feel that they're at least ready to get more than half the questions right. You should try because at the very worst, you'll get recognized as a CDMP associate. It's only if you want to kind of progress to those higher levels that the top scores are required. If you want to get recognized as a master, then you need to pass the fundamentals with an 80% or greater. So I encourage people to just take it, depending on what your goals are. That's something else to think about for you too, Linda. If you decide it's not worth your time to pursue the most advanced certifications, you could still sit for the fundamentals exam. And I'm sure based on your practical experience, you could do quite well.
I can make a practical example in the work that I'm in right now as well. In one area, simply by cleaning up our customer contacts or customer details, we were able to charge. So there were always accounts that were uncharged, mainly because there was no proper customer behind it. That was in the level of around, I think, $1.3 million that was going uncharged, mainly because we did not know who to charge with. Cool. And there was a basic emission that we had to clean this up. And by simply just doing some simple data quality checks, finance was able to find the right account to charge it with, right? And had to do a lot, right? SAP IDs, customer IDs, matching up and so forth. But because of duplicates, finance was not able to identify what proper customer ID should they charge to, and could save your company $1.3 billion of uncharged revenue simply by cleaning up data sometimes.
It's a great example. I'm glad that worked out. A lot of times in data, we are looking for a single source of truth or a single definition for a given entity, but this could be oversimplifying the case. And so data quality by necessity needs to be flexible because the entities that we're representing or aggregating, they become more abstract. What I mean by this is different business units might have different definitions of a customer. So saying, okay, as the data team, it's our job to decide there's one definition only, that might not work actually. So it might be better just to have more flexibility and use different definitions with different teams in order to derive the most value. Data quality is in the service of delivering business value, which is something that some data teams get hung up on improving data quality for its own sake. And this is a potential failure mode for a chief data officer. If there's not a clear use case, then it is potentially detracting from the initiatives that could drive business value and help support the mission of the organization. Be careful in the real world when you're going about data quality efforts. Okay, that's a fun way to learn about different data domains. We haven't really touched on this at all because it's only 2% of the exam, but it is worth giving a quick look at the big data chapter. I do find it to be super fascinating. As we do our final session of reading, you might want to give a quick look at the big data chapter, even if it's just for your own enrichment as a data practitioner. And with that, let's get into our final reading session of the day. I will chat with you guys in 19 minutes. Thank you guys so much for coming and for indulging us in discussions about data quality. Also happy to talk about big data or data science. We just have a handful of minutes left, so if there are any other burning questions, we can try to address those before we wrap up the session.
I'll actually have some question. Obviously, your company offered this fundamental notes. How do I best use your notes? Let's put it that way, right? For example, beyond notes, you didn't talk about data profiling for the data quality, but when I read through the chapter, very little session talk about data profiling. What's the trick to use your notes so this way I can at least cover everything?
It's a good question. One obvious thing to say is you should be copying the notes into your book in your own words. Where appropriate, make sure you're rephrasing things in a way that is easy for you. That good study skill is just rewriting, using your own vocabulary rather than just copying straight from the notes. We tried to do Cliff Notes version, so we were guessing at what we thought would be most important. There's no way to distill the entire DMBOK into a shorter format. I think they could have made the book a little shorter, but not that short. So it's still important to read the chapters and figure out in your own words what you think will be important.
I guess I'm trying to figure out a shortcut. If I can just zoom in on something and then maybe help motivate me to reading this big book. I think the notes help me say summarize that. And then let's say the data profiling, then I go back to the book, finding that really deep in a data profiling. That's what I'm thinking. By doing that, you think I will miss out some of the stuff we'll be asking? Well, that gave me 60%.
Yeah, I think 60% is attainable by a shortcut method. Another thing that I wanted to just call out is for those who are looking for an alternative study technique, Navigating the Labyrinth is a book by Laura Sebastian Coleman. She's one of the writers of the DMBOK, and a lot of data practitioners have said that they thought this was a great supplement to their studies of the DMBOK because it's an executive summary, essentially. That also is a recommendation that we make to people who are looking for ways to alternative reading materials that cover the same content. I think this is a great fit for you, Linda.
Yeah, because I'm looking for a condensed version and still pass, right?
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah, totally.
Just go back to school. That's how I'm register exam.
Yeah. And then another thing to call out is really focus your studies on those topics that are the most important for the exam. If you look at the list of the 7 chapters that are options for the specialist exams, those 7 chapters are collectively 70% of the CDMP fundamentals. You can do an 80-20 split by focusing your efforts on those specific chapters.
Because the way how in your study guide, even the order is different. And then I was reading somewhere on your website, it's saying that first time when you're reading, you should read in the order of the book. So what's the best approach? And originally I thought it was based on percentage. But I noticed, example, after data quality, then the data architecture is 6%. Now you go back to data modeling. What was the rational idea for the study guide doing this way, jumping from different chapters?
Yeah, so it is mostly based on the chapters in order of priority. However, I think of architecture and modeling as being one chapter that they really just broke up into 2 chapters. There's a continuity between these topics that it makes sense to read architecture as a first phase before you embark in data modeling. That's why we wanted to combine the practicality of studying the most important chapters first with the ease of reading, of also understanding how the concepts flow between topics. That's why, for example, even though data management is only 2% of the exam, we recommend that you start with that chapter because it's like an extended table of contents, basically. Start there and then work through them in order of priority.
Got it.
Thank you for those questions. Okay. So before we go, I'm very grateful to all of you guys for joining. Grateful to Mark for offering his perspective on everything. And Mark is going to be helping us lead our discussion groups next year. This is the last time that we're doing co-working, actually. We're going to have even more action-packed set of events for 2024, and it'll be Mark and Seth, our career coaches, who are leading those events. Hopefully I'll see you guys there. Those of you who are taking the exam in January, February, definitely try to show up, and I'm excited. It's going to be a great year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope to see each and every one of you there. In January, we'll be covering chapter 1, obviously a little bit there. Looking forward to seeing you there in discussion groups next year. Thank you, everyone. So,
Guys.
thanks,
Thank you.
Nicole.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye.